Hi everyone, Alan here with our weekly Discovering Buddhism teaching, and topic is how to meditate, our third class on this topic, and next week we do the fourth class, which is the last one on how to meditate. So good to be with you, hope you're well. We'll, as always, maybe start with 5 minutes of mindfulness meditation. We just watch the breath, and this is sometimes called calm abiding meditation, or a shamatha practice. Shamatha. All we do is choose an object, and in this case we can choose the breath, and we're just going to, as best we can, focus our attention on the breath, entering and leaving the body. So that's the object that we've chosen, the breath, and so we, as best we can, stay with the breath, and then part of the mind is also checking to see whether we're actually on the breath or not. That's called introspection. So we've got the concentration mind on the breath and the introspective mind checking on what we're doing. So let's spend 5 minutes on that. And just to repeat what I introduced last week, the 9-round breathing practice. 9-round breathing practice is where we close one nostril, the nose, and breathe in through the right nostril 3 times, and breathe out through the left nostril 3 times. We breathe in then through the left nostril and out through the right 3 times, and then in through both and out through both 3 times. A very simple practice, but it's said to be very good to start any meditation or practice or study, teachings, or whatever, with the 9-round breathing to clear obstacles. Okay, so get comfortable, sitting, lying down, whatever is a comfortable position for you, and we'll just do a few minutes of mindfulness breath, starting with the 9-round breathing practice. Now we begin breathing 3 times in through the right nostril and out through the left, and we can just use the index finger of the left hand to block the nostril we're not using. Then 3 times in through the left nostril, out through the right. And then 3 times in through both nostrils, out through both nostrils. And then we return to normal breathing. And now we begin our mindfulness of breath practice, watching the breath. We begin just checking our motivation, our state of mind. Just spend a moment to think how fortunate we are to come together like this and do some practice together, meditate together, study the Buddhist teachings together. Our aim is not just simply to benefit ourselves, but also by studying and practicing the Buddhist teachings, we can benefit others. Ultimately, travel the path to become a fully enlightened being, just as the Buddha did, and then be able to lead other beings to the state of full enlightenment. And now just checking the body, making sure we're comfortable, evenly balanced on the chair or the floor. Checking the upper body, the shoulders, the neck and the head. Eyes can be closed or just gently open. And using the out breath to let go of any tension in the body, breathing it out. Feeling the weight of the body on the chair or the floor. Gentle pull of gravity into the earth. And surrendering to the earth, letting go. And then gradually giving more attention to the full flow of the in-breath into the body, and the full flow of the out-breath, that gentle rhythm of the breath. No right breath or wrong breath, nothing to change. Just watching what's already happening, the natural process of breathing. One breath at a time. Part of the mind is on guard, alert for distractions, distracting thoughts. When we notice we've left the breath, wandered off, just be glad we noticed that. Just relax and then patiently come back to the breath. Let go of that distraction and come back to the breath. Staying with the breath. Full flow of the in-breath, full flow of the out-breath. Okay, just relax. So hopefully you received the notes I sent out yesterday. And also, if anyone's new and they want to join the group, I've just put in the column where it says chat, top chat, my name, Alan, and email address. So if you just want to get the notes and join the group, just email me. Also, if you've got any questions come up during the class, just email me and I'll try and answer the questions during the week. Or if they come up during the class, I'll try and answer them during the class. So just a few questions from last week, just to refresh what we did. And I've got 3 questions here. First one, what is mindfulness meditation without an object? Mindfulness meditation without an object. Sometimes it's called without a sign, S-I-G-N. It's an unusual word to use, a sign, but all it means is we're using mindfulness without a physical object, such as the breath, which is very physical. We can also use, say, sounds. Any of the senses we can focus on as an object. But this unusual, quite difficult type of meditation is where we don't use any external sensory object to focus on. We don't even use the thoughts in the mind. That's still an object, what's happening with our thoughts and feelings and so on in the mind. But we're just focusing on that spacious mind itself. It's this, sometimes it's called the clear and knowing aspect of mind, like the mirror, perfectly clean mirror with no objects reflecting in it, or a lens that has nothing in front of it. So the mind itself is what the object is there. And sometimes that sort of meditation is called Mahamudra Meditation. And Lama Yeshe, the great teacher, whose teachings often appear in this course, Discovering Buddhism course, he's written a book called Mahamudra. And in your readings for this module, How to Meditate, there's an extract of a meditation led by Lama Yeshe on this particular practice. We haven't actually done the practice in the class. It's quite an advanced practice. But it probably, if you want to go deeper, and I recommend reading the article by Lama Yeshe. In last week's notes, there's it gives you the page number in the readings. And then if you want to go further, read the book Mahamudra by Lama Yeshe. So that's basically the answer for that one, without an object, a meditation without an object. What are the 2 main obstacles to mindfulness meditation practice? We had a quick look at this last week. The 2 groups of obstacles, because they cover many different types of obstacles, are excitement and sinking. The excited mind that is too busy. There's lots of distracting thoughts, discursive thoughts happening. And so it's quite difficult for us to focus the mind on one thing. And the opposite of that is when the mind is very it's called sinking. It means that the mind is sleepy. There's a lack of stimulation and a feeling of just wanting to go to sleep. So these are the 2 obstacles. Of course, there can be other obstacles like noises outside the room and so on. But these are the mental states that we need to watch for. And then as we get more and more practice in meditation, there can be subtle versions of excitement where it doesn't seem that there's much excitement, but there could be subtle excitement and subtle sinking. So the best remedy for both, for either, first of all, that's question 3, a remedy for sleepiness. So sleepiness means that we need to lift ourselves up and be inspired. So many suggestions for this. If we've got a particular teacher or book that inspires us on Buddhism or how to meditate and so on, sometimes for me that's very inspiring. If I get a teaching from Lam Yeshe or Lam Zopa, let's just read that, a text, that can actually make me feel very inspired and wake me up. Another one is to think of the benefits of meditation and being able to calm the mind and concentrate. Benefits, many of it means that we can enjoy incredible peace internally in our mind. It means we can do even mundane jobs better. If our concentration is good, we can do our normal routines much more efficiently. We can be aware of what's happening around us. There's many benefits. And then ultimately, if we maintain mastery of our concentration and our attention, we can actually make incredible progress with our Buddhist practice. So then there's more mundane suggestions, such as if you're sleepy, then put more light in the room, let some air in. If you're sleepy, you can perhaps have a sleep and then come back and do some practice later. Go for a walk. Look at distant things like horizons and the ocean and so on. So with excitement, one of the very good analytical meditations to do is on impermanence and death. Death and impermanence. We haven't done that one yet, but that can actually bring the mind back down to earth, and we contemplate how impermanent our life is, and how we know that at some stage we're going to have to die, and the time is uncertain. That can actually be very sobering to the mind and help it come back to do some practice and less thought about what we're going to do later, some sort of exciting distraction. All right, so that's just skipping fairly quickly through the questions. And next week, I'll give you the list of questions, of all the questions for the whole topic, which Discovering Buddhism people give us, and with their suggested answers. Because we don't have opportunity to just do discussion here, I think it's good for you to have the questions and answers. So I'll provide those next week, the suggested answers. Okay, so just moving now to what is analytical meditation. We've in the last 2 weeks, we focused mainly on the type of meditation where we're calming the mind. So this is popularly known as mindfulness meditation, placement meditation, calm abiding meditation, and this meditation helps to sharpen our concentration. And from that, in the mind, if we have had some success in calming the mind, we can then move to do an analytical meditation and use that sharp, incisive mind to look at some of the more complex teachings of Buddhism, where we need some reasoning power, where we need to use our reasoning and our human brain to analyze and reason, look at these teachings on impermanence, for example, on emptiness, which is the very much part of Buddhist teachings, that everything is impermanent. Not only that, both the external world and our self, our body and our mind are subject to causes and conditions. and there is no concrete, permanent, unchanging phenomena anywhere in the world or in our collection of body and mind. So this type of meditation is what we're going to do at the end of the class. We're going to use an analytical meditation on considering our great opportunity in being born human, how fortunate it is, how rare it is, and what a great tool or opportunity it is to have this human body. So that's the analytical meditation we'll do later. Now, if the thing with analytical meditation is, remember that from the first class mentioned that when we're studying Buddhism, we need to do, there's actually like 3 activities that we do. First, we have to listen, we have to get information about what the Buddhist teachings are. That can be done by listening, could be listening to a teacher live, could be listening to a podcast. It could also by reading teachings that have been recorded in writing. That's getting information. The second thing is to then think about that, the content of that information. And this could involve checking to see whether it fits our inner sense of wisdom. Does it make sense to us? And so this could be done sitting in meditation, which is the analytical type of meditation, or it could be done when we're just in the world. For instance, if we experience a loss of a loved one, and we've experienced this grief, we've heard about impermanence in Buddhist teaching. You can see this as an example of impermanence in our actual experience with this person who we've been very close to, attached to, is now gone. And probably intellectually, we've realised that everything is impermanent. But when we actually confront it with the actual experience of losing a loved one, it could even be a pet, a sentient being, a being that we're close to, then we realise that this is more than just an intellectual experience, something we're taking that affects our mind. So that gives us some sort of deeper experience of the teaching. And then the last one, listening, thinking, and meditating, is where we focus either 2 types of meditation, the calm abiding one, or we can actually then use our reasoning and do a guided meditation on a particular topic of impermanence or whatever it is. It could be compassion, it could be emptiness, and so on. So the actual place where I'm getting the actual points here on page 1 of the notes are Geshe Tetsog's teachings. Geshe Tetsog, who's a very high teacher, I've never met him, but he's a very recognized teacher. I think teaches in America, I'm not quite sure. So in the readings, page 28, there's one of his an extract of one of his teachings. And so he's talking about the importance of analytical meditation. And he says how getting convinced of something's being true by analytical meditation is much more powerful than just by chance just having a quick flash of inspiration. That's what he calls correct assumptions. Okay, so correct assumptions where my example of losing a loved one, if we haven't actually thought much about impermanence, we've got this experience where we can think, yes, obviously this is an example that everyone, everything and every person in our lives, we're going to have to leave at some stage. Either they will pass away or we will pass away at some stage. There has to be a parting. Every meeting, will be followed by a party. So if that's just like a fleeting experience, we might just, as we recover from the loss and move on with our lives, we lose that insight. So that's what he calls, we've experienced something that is correct, but we haven't actually integrated into our way of thinking. And that's what analytical meditation does. We repeatedly think through a particular line of reasoning and we apply it to our lives, and then using our stability of concentration, integrate it into our way of thinking. So this is to change our mental habits, which are so ingrained. Most of them are not helping us. Most of our mental habits, we're told, are based on either attachment or aversion or ignorance, that lack of understanding of how things exist. So these mental habits that have caused all our problems ultimately, attachment, aversion, ignorance, can be changed, but because they've been around in our mind for innumerable eons of time, not just in this life, but in previous life, it takes quite a lot of doing to change them. So a lot of repetition and a lot of practice. So, so the other point is, if we just approach the Buddhist teachings with the wish to get information intellectually, we could have what he calls the condition of being immune to Dharma. That means we're looking for new ideas, exciting ideas, but we're not actually that interested in applying them to ourselves and changing our mind. That means, so when we hear something, we've got this approach and we've already heard it before, we might get bored. So this, well, I've already heard this, now I want something more interesting. So there's an interesting book written quite a long time ago called Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism by a teacher called Chogyam Trungpa. No, he's since passed away, but he did a lot of teaching in America, very popular teacher. So he was pointing out how, particularly Westerners who first encounter the Buddhist teachings, and back in the 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s, most of the Westerners who encountered Buddhist teachings had gone to India and were very much influenced by the environment, the exotic Indian culture, the incense, the Hindu, being in the East rather than the West, and so there was this almost attraction to the environment rather than the teachings were there. If we were lucky enough to come across great teachers who were giving correct teachings, then we had teachings, but some not necessarily the actual content of the teachings. We could have been actually more interested in the cultures, the clothing, and so on, the exotic differences of being in a different world. So that's another danger. But I guess nowadays, when people have got the teachings here, that was my introduction to Buddhism, was going on a trip to India in the early 80s. But luckily, I'd had some contact with Buddhist teachings by reading in Australia and actually attending a centre in Sydney. So I wasn't really going there for the exotic scenery. I was actually looking for something a bit more deep, and so I'd also travelled a lot in other countries. So everyone's got a slightly different experience, and so I still probably was guilty of being very tied up in, distracted by the amazing cultures and so on in Nepal, the Himalayas, and so on. So this is just pointed out by Geshe Tetsog just to alert us to the difference between just having a flash of inspiration and taking that inspiration and wanting to change our lives from it, to actually go deeper and to not to just look for another more interesting idea, more interesting religion and so on. So not just be shopping, not just religious shopping or spiritual shopping. So nowadays there's so much available, and of course with the COVID we can't go shopping by hopping on a plane and going to exotic locations. So that's sort of taken care of that danger. We do, on the other hand, have incredible resources online. We have books and we have digital resource media and so on. So the other interesting point that Geshe Tetsuro makes is that if we want to just understand analytical meditation a bit more, he gives the example of if we're not in a context of Buddhism, but say we're very obsessed with a particular person. We might think of our first love when we were very attracted to a particular person, and we saw them as 100% perfect, and we would think all the reasons why they're perfect, everything they do, everything they say, their clothes, the whole thing. So we're not seeing any of the negative, we're only seeing the positive, this kind of deluded prism that we look through. Or it could be someone we don't like at all. And we, again, build a story. I don't like this person because they said this and this and this. So you actually use reasoning and collect evidence as to why this person is perfect or this person is totally terrible. And so our mind is always usually going to extremes, wanting to like or dislike, this sort of kind of obsession with the extremes, and then we cling to that as being completely true. The person not only was terrible to me, but I got more information from other people, and they did this and this and that and that. So all this is using analytical meditation. We wouldn't call it that, but we're thinking of why this is particularly good or this is particularly bad. Could happen to things as well. You know, this car that we've got to have is just so perfect. This job that I've got to have is just so perfect. So this idea of seeing through very deluded and selective reasoning and evidence and believing that that's true. Now, this is not based on correct reasoning, because the basis is flawed. The basis that we can we have this feeling usually that we need to make ourselves whole. This person is perfect because they're going to actually give us this love and attention and make us feel wonderful. So looking outwards for this for things, experiences and people that will make us feel whole is forgetting that internally the problem is in our minds. It's how we see things. So we need to look internally and check what's happening in our minds. So this is when we use analytical meditation based on correct reasoning. Good example of all this, I guess, is just thinking about whether we're going to get vaccinated or not, making it a bit more topical. So there's possibility that we'll just go to the doctor and ask what he thinks, and the doctor will give us advice, hopefully, that we should get vaccinated. And that's the reason why we're going to get vaccinated, because I was told by an expert. The other way would be to ask an expert and also collect evidence, maybe do some research, find different types of vaccinations, learn more about the disease and how dangerous it is, and use this information to, in our own intelligence and wisdom, decide which is the best to get vaccinated or to risk getting the disease. Okay, so this is just one sort of mundane example of the difference between coming to conclusions that are based on reasoning and coming to conclusions that are just relying on maybe the authority somebody said. And this is very much relates to the way we approach the study of Buddhism, and we're told that the more we question, more we use reasoning and use our own wisdom to come to conclusions, and this can be done in meditation, using analytical meditation, step-by-step reasoning, then the more that is going to be integrated and will help change our mind rather than just have a temporary effect, and then we go back to old habits. So it is the key with any meditation practice, anything that we do that is actually going to have a long-term profound effect is going to take time and effort. So we need to confront this. It's not going to be an instant result. Even if you just look at our education, how long we've studied at school, 6 years primary, 6 years high school, and then if we go into a profession, maybe another 6 years, 3 to 6 years, and maybe even a postgraduate degree, just to get a job, a well-paid job or a secure job, hopefully. Even then we may not get it. But that's an enormous amount of our life to achieve the effect of being educated. So how much more effort and time is going to take to change the way we think, which is hugely difficult, but also hugely worthwhile. Just a few words of inspiration from Lama Yeshe when we're thinking about the long-term project of meditating and changing our minds. He says, when you enter into meditational practice, it may first seem very difficult. Discouraging thoughts often arise. How can I meditate? I'm new to this. I know nothing. I'm such a bad person. How can I ever hope to gain realizations? So Lama Yeshe says this way of thinking is completely mistaken. He says you never know what your level of attainment can be until you try. He says because your mind is obscured at the moment, you don't know what your true potential is. If you try your best, you may surprise yourself. Whenever negative thoughts about your capacity arise, be brave and think to yourself, whether I'm completely successful or not, at least I'll try to gain some experience. It could be that your attempts at meditation have been full of distraction, and suddenly some potential ripens, giving the surprising ability to make enormous use of the tools of meditation. And some success, a good session. So to integrate these techniques into your own experience, you have to go slowly, gradually. You can't just jump right in the deep end. It takes time. Of course, you'll have trouble at first. But if you take it easy, it gets less and less difficult as time goes by. So there's some wonderful words of encouragement. Lama Yeshe always use very plain and direct English, very inspiring. So the other type of meditation, which I haven't touched on yet, is called glance meditation. Glance meditation, which means what it suggests. We glance at the overall topics and to get a bird's eye view of the either the single topic or the collection of topics. A bit like looking down from a high point on the village below or the town below. So this won't give us the detailed knowledge, but it will give us a kind of a sketch of what's coming, and can be very useful to have a sketch of what's coming before we actually start studying, where we can look at say that often we're taught to look at the index of a book we're reading, particularly if it's non-fiction, and to just get an idea of what's the layout of the content of the book. So this is one possibility, or we can actually, after we've heard some sort of teaching, we can then go back and look at the context. This is really the way I had to study Buddhism, because in the early 80s when I started studying Buddhism, there wasn't really a lot of books that could give you an overview of the teachings. There was just a handful of books translated in English. And teachers were traveling to the West and giving teaching on a particular topic usually, but it was quite difficult to get an overview of all the Buddhist teachings. So now there are a lot more resources to draw on, and we can actually find something. Now, discovering Buddhism is actually like an overview of the basic Buddhist teachings, all the basic Buddhist teachings, called the Lam Rim. So there are many sort of prayers written by great teachers, Lama Tsongkhapa, for example, and in those just a few verses, maybe a page or two, they've actually encapsulated the essence of all the Buddhist teachings. And this is a glance meditation on the whole of Buddhist teaching. So I've just mentioned there on page 2, one such prayer is called The Foundations of All Good Qualities by Lama Tsongkhapa. And that's a prayer that is often recited at the beginning of teachings. Often at Vajrayana Institute, we recite that prayer before teaching. There's another one called the Guru Puja, which is a practice which is done usually every month at centres. And within that prayer, which is quite long, usually takes an hour or two to go through the Guru Puja. There's one part of it that is called the overview of the path. And all it's just a page or two, a few pages on the whole of the Buddhist path, or the main points of the Buddhist path. So glance meditation, very useful for getting a bird's eye view of a particular topic. So when in a minute, what's the time? Just checking the watch. 47, okay. So when we get to the meditation at the end of this class, I've actually put the whole meditation in writing, so you can actually see the topics that are coming that we're going to contemplate. And so that's a smaller version of glance meditation, just to see what's involved in this particular practice of appreciating our human life. That's the topic that we're going to do. So just over the page now, putting these two types of meditation together, analytical and placement, or concentration meditation. So good reference on this topic is Sangye Kadro's transcript that you've all got. I sent out with the collection of materials in the first class, where she actually teaches this whole topic called How to Meditate in, I think it's 6 weeks, and there's a transcript there. So quite a lengthy transcript, but within it, there, page 35, Sangye Kadro, also known as Kathleen MacDonald, who wrote the book How to Meditate, a terrific book which has probably the best collection of guided meditations that you'll find, How to Meditate. She's just briefly and simply describes how we can use and combine the two types of meditation, which is basically the way we structure our drop-in meditations at Vajrayana Institute. We used in 1 hour, the sessions are 1 hour, and for the first 25-30 minutes, we use a calm abiding mindfulness practice to calm the mind down, to let the discursive thoughts lose their power, to calm, to relax, physically relaxing the body, and then what Alan Marsh calls putting the mind, the body, speech, and mind in its natural state. That is, relaxing the body, quietening the speech, both internal speech and external speech, and resting the mind in a quiet, calm space. So that's the calm abiding meditation, and then we do, using that calm, open mind, we do a analytical meditation on a different topic every week, different topic of the teachings. And so we go through using our reasoning. It's guided meditation, so the leader, the teacher, will actually tell you, gives background to the topic, and then they'll go through point by point and allow the students to actually rest their mind on each point. So you dwell, it's giving the mind the chance to absorb the information and to actually give some sort of experiential taste, some sort of feeling to what's being said. I remember when, I think probably one of the first analytical meditations I did was when I went to India, and I did a retreat in, a group retreat in Dharamsala, and the teacher led us through a death meditation, which was very, very vivid, and was imagining that we were going for a walk up into the mountains and we fell down, had a heart attack or whatever, and was going through the process of death, what it involves with the mind, what we experience. So this meditation took probably 20 to 30 minutes, and I can still remember the details of it, that it was very sobering, and because we're in a retreat environment, so it was actually a 3-month retreat, so we hadn't been down to the town or anything. So the mind was very much open, and so I can, analytical meditation, when it's taught well and when the circumstances are conducive, can really change my way of thinking. Come away with that truth of impermanence, and that our life is short, and we can accept that death is certain, time of death is uncertain, and the only thing that will help at the time of death is our state of mind. So that was, sometimes the meditation can have even if it's just taught once, can be very powerful. But the more we repeat these meditations, then the more the mind can be changed. It can, just like, will eventually be softened. The water on the stone image is quite pertinent with meditation. The water, drop by drop, dripping on a stone over a long period, will actually wear away the stone. So let's just now move to the meditation itself that we're going to do, appreciating our human life. So this is one of the basic Lamrim meditations. It's usually translated as the perfect human rebirth, meditating on the perfect human rebirth. So the idea of the meditation is to give us self-confidence and to energize us to do some practice. And how does it do this? By pointing out, using reasoning, logical inferences as to how rare it is to be born human, and how we could have been born in another sort of other different there's other different beings. Think of animals and so on, and also not just being human, but our situation where we actually have been born in a place where we can practice freedom of religion. So we go through all the good things about our situation right now. And as the Dalai Lama said there, I'm looking at page 3 on the notes, self-confidence is a crucial factor for both mundane and spiritual activity. So in our daily life, we need self-confidence to be successful in our work, our everyday life. And in our spiritual practice, we need to appreciate how fortunate we are, and how what an opportunity this human life is that we have. And he says, if without this sort of in our minds, this being convinced that we can change ourselves for the better, we have this incredible positive potential, then we can, particularly in today's news type society where we're always getting bad news, he says we can be overcome by wars, by the news of the actual what's going on in the world. Environmental destruction he named as one, war, and this hinders our enthusiasm for Dharma practice. We tend to get overwhelmed by the external bad things that are going on and forgetting the internal qualities that we've got. So the actual formal way that this is expressed to appreciate our human life is that we are free from 8 impediments and endowed with 10 qualities. Now, without getting too tied up with all the numbers, and the favourable states are that we could have been born in some other form. So if we were born an animal, so the animal realm is really good to contemplate because we can see it and we can understand the difficulties and sufferings that go on there. So if you just think, we probably think of our pets when we first think of animals, but if you think, we'll start with the pets. The pets have very good life if they're born in the West and they're a pet in the Western household because they get fed, they usually get loved, and they get their needs cared for. But the problem that they have is there's animals are dumb in the sense they can't speak, they can't read, they can't understand what we're saying. So they're of limited intelligence, and they can't, even if they were listening to the most perfect, the Buddha himself teaching day and night their whole life, they wouldn't really have a great effect on their mind. So then we think of the wild animals who are totally in fear of being eaten. Think of particularly the sea. Each fish is being eaten by the bigger fish, and so on. The food chain. Then there's the animals suffering from heat and cold, hunger, and so on. Wild animals. So then there are other realms which we'll do in other modules, but there are realms that we can't see. Some of them are very luxurious and comfortable, and others are not. So the lower realms include what they call the hell realms, people where the beings are suffering great pain of heat or cold. There are beings suffering from hunger that can't be satisfied. They're called the hungry ghosts or pretas. And then in the higher realms that are still within this realm of suffering called samsara, there are these beings that are just intoxicated with pleasure. So they're called sometimes the God realms or the higher realms. His Holiness calls them discriminateless gods. I've never heard them called that. So these could be beings who practice in such a way that their mind is becoming completely blissed out with almost no mental activity, but they're still in samsara. They're not enlightened beings. Or they could be in realms where they're just suffering, not suffering, but they're in a constant pleasure of the senses, so much so that they can't find time to practice, even if there are teachings available. And then eventually, when the karma to experience this luxurious life runs out, they will have to go to the lower realms. So these are unfavorable states. The human realm is the one with the human mind that is the most favorable to be born in. So even if we are born human, we could be born in a society or a place where there are no teachings, where Buddhist teachings just don't exist, where religious freedom is outlawed. We can think of many examples of that in the world today, where people cannot practice their own spiritual beliefs. And then there are other places where people are overwhelmed with work just to stay alive. So there might be Buddhist teachings, particularly if you go to India, where there's probably just about every type of religious teaching available, but there are people who are having to work their whole life just to stay alive, just to have enough to eat. Then there are beings who are born human but without full mental capacity or full physical capacity. So they're unable to listen to the teachings perhaps or understand the teaching because of these impairments. And then there are others who have just instinctively in their mental makeup an aversion to hearing the Buddhist teachings. This is called having wrong views. So they could be listening to the greatest teachings by the Buddha himself, but they instinctively, because of their karmic imprints from previous lives, think it's nonsense, or they're not interested. So if you think of the time when the Buddha himself was teaching back in India in 500 BC, there weren't that many people interested. Out of the whole population of India, there weren't that many who had all these attributes where they were interested and they had the time to hear the Buddhist teachings and so on. So these conditions that we actually have, all of them, the boxes are ticked for us in the West, where we have the human body, born in an auspicious place, and have teachings, teachers, and centers that we can go to. So this is unbelievable opportunity. So what we're doing in this practice is just going through these points and resting the mind on them and allowing them to sink in. So this is what analytical meditation is. So if you just, the overview of the practice is on page 4 and 5. So what we're going to do is just, no need to read them. I'll just guide us through those points to contemplate our incredible opportunity to have a human body, and with all the right conditions to use the body and the brain and the mind to make progress and to study the Dharma, study the path and practice the path, so that we can become liberated from all our suffering and become fully enlightened beings, if not in this life, in future lives. Okay, so it's nearly 7:05, so probably spend maybe 20 minutes, if we could, on this analytical meditation. And so get comfortable, maybe just have a sip of something or a refreshment. And we'll contemplate, do the analytical meditation on appreciating our human life. And we'll start, as always, with a few minutes of breath meditation. So find a comfortable position, sitting, lying down, making sure the body is relaxed, breathing out any tension in the body, allowing the mind and body to settle in its natural state of calmness, openness, tranquility, spaciousness. So we begin our meditation on appreciating our human life, the human body that we have at this present moment, by starting with the human body that we have and thinking of how fortunate we are to not be born in other forms. We are born with this physical human body, with a human brain capable of reasoning, understanding, learning. If we think of the animal realm, beings born in an animal body, the main feature of the animal realm is lack of understanding, lack of intelligence. Even if the animals are well looked after in the human realm by their pets, as pets in the West, they're still unable to comprehend teachings. There's very little that we can do to help animals in their animal bodies. We can actually think about the wild animals suffering from fear of being eaten by other animals. Thinking of the wildlife programs we watch on television that are highlighting the constant wars between animals and the fear that they live in, being eaten or eating other animals. The suffering of hunger, cold, heat in the wild animal realm, constantly looking for food. The other lower realms, apart from the animal realms, we can't see, but there are authoritative texts, reliable accounts Excuse me. There are realms where these beings are overwhelmed by the suffering of heat and cold. Other realms where beings are constantly searching for food, called the hungry ghost realms. Excuse me. So in these realms, the beings are so overwhelmed by the suffering, various types of suffering, that their minds cannot, even if there are teachers and teachings available, they would not be able to focus on the words. So then there are other beings in them, they call the God realms, the higher realms, who are overwhelmed with pleasure, sensual pleasure. And so their minds are just intoxicated with sensual pleasures, not totally distracted by external stimuli, and even though they may have the time, they cannot concentrate on any teachers or teachings, any Dharmic practice. So these beings, once their karma to experience these pleasurable realms are ended, they will go, because they have not practiced, not created any positive imprints in their minds, go to the lower realms, the suffering realms. So it's only being reborn in a human body that we have the opportunity to develop our minds. And to do that, we need a body that is relatively well, a mind that is healthy. We need all our faculties. So even though we may be born in a human body, we need more than that to have a perfect human rebirth. We need to be born in a safe country, free of civil unrest, free of wars. In this country where we are born, or where we exist now, there is respect for human rights, respect for freedom of religion. We have our basic needs catered for, our food, shelter, clothing. We have enough resources to take care of ourselves. Few natural disasters. And not only that, but we have the Buddhist teachings existing in this country now, only have been existing here for probably half a century or less, in a language we understand. We also have qualified teachers who spend, ordained Sangha, ordained teachers who have spent their entire life, or most of their life, studying the Dharma, and then being willing to transmit their knowledge, their teaching. Think of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, able to transmit his teachings to a wide audience, a language they understand, often regarded as embodiment of the Buddha of compassion, Chenrezig, alive now in the world, teaching, giving initiations, and doing unfathomable works for all living beings. We also have centres where the Dharma is taught in a language we understand, where like-minded individuals can come together and listen to the Dharma teaching, communicate, form a community of Buddhist students. And these teachings available, the entire path to enlightenment is laid out. Without any mistakes or any omissions. So the entire path is available for us to study and practice. Not only that, we have the human body, we're born in an auspicious place where the Dharma is available, but we have leisure time, some time where we can actually not work and devote ourselves to Dharma practice. And not only that, we have an interest in the Dharma. Thinking of the vast majority of beings who have the human body, born in an auspicious place, have the time, but have no interest in spiritual practice, studying teachings, developing their minds. So we must have done some practice in the past, put imprints on our minds, maybe in past lives, where we've listened to teaching, to practice, created the seeds, planted the seeds for the interest in this life, in continuing our spiritual development, so we can rejoice in the fact that we have this merit, the imprints on our mind, to want to learn more about the Dharma, to listen to the Dharma, think about the Dharma, and meditate on Buddhist teachings, wanting to improve our positive qualities. So with all these auspicious conditions available, we need to also bear in mind that these conditions are fragile. We also bear in mind that these conditions are fragile and they could end at any time. This body we have is subject to illness, so many causes that could end our life: old age, sickness, death. Contemplating of death, the uncertainty of time of death. These conditions could suddenly end. The time of death, the only thing that will benefit is our practice, our mind, our state of mind. So, given the rare circumstances that have brought this human body to this place, we can conclude to use our time wisely, whatever time we have left in this human body, with the human brain, human mind. As much as possible, follow ethical conduct, positive actions of body, speech and mind, avoiding negative actions of body, speech and mind. Training in the 6 perfections, bearing in mind cause and effect, how our actions in this life will determine what happens in the next life. In short, taking the essence of this human life and making it meaningful. As Lama Zopa said, there's nothing more precious than the perfect human rebirth, this body and mind. More precious than diamonds equaling the number of atoms of this earth. So, we can just dedicate any positive merit, but his positive imprints from this meditation on the perfect human rebirth, appreciating this human life, dedicating towards our progress along the path to enlightenment while we have this opportunity, making life meaningful, practicing Dharma, listening to teachings, doing meditation, creating the causes for auspicious death, time of death, and for auspicious rebirth in the next life, or enlightenment, either in this life or in future lives. Also, just reading Lama Zopa's special dedication during the pandemic. However many sick sentient beings there are, may they quickly be freed from all sickness. May all the sickness without exception of all transmigrating beings never occur again. May perfect peace and happiness prevail in everyone's hearts and lives. May the Buddha Dharma last for a long time, and may the sentient beings in this world meet the Buddha Dharma and achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible, dedicating to that. Okay, so that's it for tonight. Thanks so much for being there. Have a wonderful night, a good week. Stay well, and I hope to see you next week at the same time. Take care, stay well.